The Carolina Panthers can potentially lock up the NFC South on Sunday while the Seattle Seahawks are trying to maintain this top spot in the NFC. We're bringing it all down here on this Locked On Panthers and Locked On Seahawks NFL crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers and Locked On Seahawks podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we're talking Carolina Panthers and we're talking Seattle Seahawks every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday, and every Friday. Yes, that's right, your team every day. And here on Christmas Day, we're even talking about the Panthers and the Seahawks for this big matchup on Sunday afternoon in Uptown Charlotte. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today is Crossover Thursday, and as y'all should already know by now, it is presented by our friends over at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. The first place in the NFC South, Carolina Panthers welcome in their old friend Sam Darnold in the top team in the NFC West and in the NFC, the Seattle Seahawks, to Bank of America Stadium on Sunday. Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. How you doing, man? And how about Sam Darnold getting it done in primetime last week and the Seahawks sitting here with the top spot heading into Week 17?
Yeah, it's been such a crazy season for Sam. And Panthers fans know this, how it goes up and down with Sam when it comes to, the turnover bug sometimes bites him, and then he can turn around and throw for 300 yards and have a game with 3 touchdown passes. He could have one game that goes that way. We saw that last Thursday night against the Rams with 2 interceptions that seemed like they were going to be backbreakers, and then he turns around and leads 2 touchdown drives, one to tie the game and one to win the game, a 2-point conversion to Eric Saubert. So, it's a roller coaster at times with Sam under center, but the guy has won a lot of football games the last 2 years. Minnesota getting to 14 wins last year with him as a starting quarterback. We've seen what's happened to them without him under center this year. And Seattle now 12-3. They've got the best record in the NFC. They're trying to maintain that. And certainly the pressure is still on them. This is not done by any means. In fact, if they lose either one of their last 2 games, the chances of this Seahawks team getting that number 1 seed or winning the NFC West goes down significantly, because the Rams have the tiebreakers if both teams finish the year 13-4. And, oh, by the way, this is San Francisco to close out the season, and the 49ers have a chance to still steal the number 1 seed. That is how good this NFC West division has been this year. So Sam Darnold is going to have to continue to play extremely well, especially on the road against one of his former teams. And Julian, this Panthers squad, it's been so interesting to watch, because it truly has been a every other week ordeal with this team in terms of what you're going to get. Losing to the Saints, beating the Packers, some of the things that have happened over the course of this season. What's been with the inconsistency for them, and how can they get over that hump and actually win back-to-back games here with the NFC South title within reach for them?
Yeah, you're right, man. It's been a yo-yo since Week 7 after they won 3 straight games there against Miami, against Dallas, and then on the road against the Jets. They've gone from winning to losing to winning to losing, and you bring up the fact that the Panthers can go on the road and beat a Packers team, but then can't come back home and beat what was then a 1-win Saints team. They can beat the Rams at home, and then they can go after a bye on the road and lose to that same Saints team that should have had their attention. So I think for Carolina, really it just comes down to the maturation and professionalism of this team. This is still a very young outfit that you have here in Carolina. There's guys who've been around, like Taylor Moton, who was there the last time the Panthers made the playoffs. Now, he was not a contributor on that team. He was a backup offensive lineman. You have Chuba Hubbard, who's been here for a couple of years now, but he's never been a part of like a winning team. Derrick Brown, J.C. Horn, like those are your leaders. They have not been around when the Panthers have been a playoff team. So I just think it's everybody learning how to win and learning how to handle success. That's really been their biggest issue this season. We know and we have seen that when they get blown out against New England, against Buffalo, they can bounce right back and get big wins. We know that they can get off the mat. What we don't know so far, and what we have not seen, is if they can handle success. And they're going to have to at one point, one of these next 2 weeks, whether it be this Sunday against Seattle, where if they win and Tampa loses, they are NFC South division title champions for the first time in a decade, or they have to do it next week on the road against Tampa, where maybe it'll be more of a backs against the wall situation. As far as the pattern goes, they're supposed to lose this Sunday and then win next week. And quite honestly, looking at just the clinching scenarios, this game probably is not going to mean that much for them anyways against Seattle, where they win or lose. So next week is really where it all matters. So how can they find a way to get off this seesaw? Take care of the football, of course. We'll talk more about the key to victory, but I don't know. They just got to mature, finally decide to tell themselves let's focus and let's actually handle our business for back-to-back weeks, which has not been the case since week 7 and week 6.
Yeah, for the Seahawks, they're going to be looking at this game as kind of a bounce back defensively, because as good as this team has been on that side of the ball, Matthew Stafford threw for 457 yards. Puka Nacua went off for over 200 receiving yards, had a couple of touchdowns in that game, including in overtime. And at that point, it seemed like the Seahawks, even with their comeback efforts, were going to lose that game, and Sam Darnold willed them back. So this is going to be a contest where Seattle – we'll see where the health is at for a few of their defensive backs, Kobe Bryant and Reek Woolen dealing with knee injuries. Nicky Manwari looks like he's going to be good to go to come back to Carolina and be able to play after passing the concussion protocol at the end of that game against the Rams. But they've got to get this defense back playing to the level that they are accustomed to, back up to their standard. Can they get to Bryce Young? Can they rattle the young quarterback? Can they coax him into some bad decisions? Can they get the interior pressure that's been so good for this team for most of the year and make life difficult on the young quarterback? Limit the run game. There's a lot of question marks there. Can this Seahawks defense get back to what they've been for most of the season? And look, just like Carolina's been able to get off the mat, the few times the Seahawks defense has been knocked to the ground, they've come back the next week and they've been fantastic. When Tampa Bay did it to them early this year, when the Bucs were playing much better football, Seattle was also missing a bunch of players on defense that game, came back and they held Jacksonville down. And we've seen what the Jags have done the last month. That was as much as any team has held their offense down all season long. So Seattle is going to be looking to keep that trend going, where if the defense does have an off day, it doesn't last more than 1 week. That's going to be crucial for them if they want to stay in that number one spot of the NFC.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear that the defense is what your focal point is going into this game, when you would think, from at least my perspective, Sam Darnold coming back to Carolina, that would be a big storyline. And look, Sam's not here for your narratives after that win on Thursday, where, as you mentioned, he had the tough turnovers, but he was still able to find a way to get that team down there to tie the game, to win in overtime, the absurd 2-point conversion, then the one at the end of that game to win it. So, I'm happy for the guy that he's gone from his situation in Carolina. And I've told people, if there's any what ifs about what happened when he was here, when Baker Mayfield was here, was probably had Sam won the quarterback competition and not been out there for that preseason game number 3, where he was with the second team and then injured his ankle. What if he wins quarterback battle? Because when he came back late in that season in 2022, he actually was playing some pretty good ball. And since then, played well in his spot starts there in San Francisco, was really good last year in Minnesota until he wasn't at the end, and has been obviously really good again this year in Seattle. So good to see kind of his turnaround story, his redemption arc, and how it's really working out for Seattle's benefit, as again, they sit with a top spot in the NFC West and in the NFC heading into this game on Sunday. But let's talk about some matchups here between Carolina and Seattle, which can tilt either team in the direction of winning or losing. We'll talk about that here on a Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, it's fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, North Carolina, and South Carolina as well. Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which keeps everything flowing. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in the lives after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in the lives after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Back here on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Seahawks. Julian Council, host of Locked On Panthers. Corbin Smith, he is one of the hosts of Locked On Seahawks, breaking down this Week 17 match with the Panthers. They can clinch the division. They can clinch their first playoff appearance in 8 years, first division title in a decade, with a win against Seattle on Sunday and a Tampa Bay loss against Miami, which I don't think is going to happen, but the Bucs have lost 6 out of 7, including to the Saints and the Falcons. So certainly it is possible, whereas Seattle, apparently, if they win and then somehow the Falcons rise up and beat LA and then you watch the 49ers lose, they'll win a division. But I have a hard time believing either one of those things are going to happen this week. But looking at this game on Sunday, Corbin, what is a matchup that you're looking at that you think could help Seattle win on Sunday against Carolina?
Well, with most games, when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks, their defense, the strength lies in the middle of their defensive line. Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy II. They've got Jaron Reed back healthy now. And Riley Mills, an up-and-coming rookie that just came off a torn ACL. He's missed most of his rookie season, but he's starting to make some plays. I look at that interior defensive line. Can they find a way to take advantage of what seems to be Bryce Young's biggest weak point as a smaller quarterback? If you can collapse the pocket inside and get pressure on him, you can coax him into making some mistakes there. If the Seahawks are able to do that against a Panthers line, and looking at the games that I've been able to watch to this point, that has been kind of one of the roller coaster issues for Carolina, has been being able to protect him from the inside. That's where Seattle's biggest strength lies. Can Big Cat, Murphy, Jaron Reed and company consistently harass Bryce Young in the pocket inside? If they are able to do that, that dramatically increases their chances of being able to hold down this Panthers offense that's been pretty up and down over the course of the season. They've had really good highs. They've had some lows as well. Seattle can make that happen if they're able to take advantage of Carolina's interior and they are able to turn up the heat. I am curious, though, where Carolina's passing game is going to be able to go if the pass rush is not able to get home, because as good as Seattle's secondary has been, they did just give up 10 explosive plays to the Rams. And Carolina's got some really intriguing young receivers that seem to be getting better by week.
Yeah, Tetairoa McMillan is the one that you're certainly going to be looking at on Sunday, as he has been excellent for them. He has the best odds scoring to FanDuel to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, curiously, Tyler Shuck is creeping closer. And if Tyler Shuck somehow over the final 2 weeks wins that award after a full season of McMillan playing at a high level as a rookie first-round pick, that would be absolutely insane. Let's just go ahead and give all the awards to the quarterbacks. That's how it's going to be. But, yeah, he would be the guy to really look out for. If you're a Seahawks fan watching this game on Sunday, he's been the primary playmaker out wide for Carolina. And it is interesting. The Panthers have had 11 different starting combinations in their 15 games this season. And yet here they sit at 8-7. When that's happened in the past, this thing has completely fallen apart. And they have been one of the worst teams in the National Football League, like a couple of years ago, and they had 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards, and they went 2-15. The only team to ever do that so far in the NFL. And it will be interesting because, like, Austin Corbett, looking at PFF, was the lowest graded offensive lineman on Sunday, starting there at right guard. And one of the plays that Bryce Young had pressure up the middle, he was able to evade the rush, just run around and find JT Sanders wide open for a touchdown. So Bryce has actually done a really good job the last couple of weeks, especially against New Orleans. Then this past Sunday against Seattle, or not against Seattle, but against Tampa. of avoiding the rush, be able to make some plays with his legs, whether it just be him running, scrambling, or him find somebody down the field. And even when you sent the pressure, we've seen he found McMillan right before the half on Sunday. So that will be certainly a matchup to look at. I know for me, I'm just very curious to see how this Panthers offense in total is going to match up against this Seahawks defense, which is going to be by far the best defense they've faced so far this season. Seattle, looking at it right now, they're third in EPA per play. They're fourth in success rate. They're top 5 both in passing and rushing success rate defensively. They're 6th in havoc rate. They're 2nd in opponent explosive play percentage. So while they maybe gave up a lot of explosive plays on Thursday against the Rams, that has not been the norm for them, as I'm sure you know. Well, Carolina's been really kind of middle of the road throughout the season offensively. They've found a little bit more balance, a little bit more consistency recently, which I think is in large part why they now are in first place of the NFC South. So I'm just curious how Carolina, going up against an elite defense, is going to be able to handle that from a down and down out basis when they really have not played a unit this good all season long.
Yeah, and I look for the Seahawks on offense when they've really been struggling this year, when they have had their issues with protecting Sam Darnold. A lot of the times it has been that interior pressure, and they've got a good rookie guard in Gray Zabel, who actually gave up his first 2 sacks of the season against the Rams on Thursday night. He's generally been really good in pass pro. Jalen Sundell came back from injured reserve a couple weeks ago, and he's been playing pretty good football since he returned. He is a better pass protector than Olu Oluwatimi, who replaced him for 4 games. Anthony Bradford at right guard has been the biggest issue, though you look at the last 7 games, he's given up 1 sack and 5 pressures total. He has been much better there. But when Seattle's had their issues protecting Sam Darnold, a lot of times it has been interior pressure. It's been blitzes that have come from the interior, and that's where he has gotten into some trouble, making some bad decisions or taking sacks. Derrick Brown and company up there for Carolina. That is one matchup that could be concerning, especially if he gets matched up against Anthony Bradford. As well as Bradford has played, there is the track record there. Is he going to be able to keep Derrick Brown from being a game wrecker here and getting after his former teammate in the pocket? That is going to be something that I'm watching very closely, because if Seattle can keep him at bay and the rest of that defensive line, Sam has the chance to get some play action game going. I feel like the Seahawks receiving core can get some plays downfield, but if Brown is causing problems up there, that could be something that completely disrupts what they try to do throwing the football, particularly in a road game.
Yeah, and I'll see if we'll see, I guess, if Derrick Brown is motivated by not being a Pro Bowler. I thought that he's played at a Pro Bowl level this season. That has not, of course, materialized at this point in time. Could always get in there as guys drop out, but he's been really excellent so far this season. And you go back to the last time they played an NFC West opponent at home, that game against the Rams, he made 2 of the critical plays in that game that helped them win. He had a tip ball at the line of scrimmage that was intercepted by Nick Scott. Then he had a strip sack at the end of that game that closed it out of Matthew Stafford. So he has been really great in some of these situations, and you need your best players to be your best players when you go up against some of the best teams in the NFL. And that has certainly been him and J.C. Horn, who did get the Pro Bowl nod earlier this week. So yeah, they got to get to Sam Darnold, certainly. We'll talk about the keys here momentarily, but that is one of those things where you look at Sam Darnold this season, when he's been kept clean, he has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. When he's been under pressure, he has looked like the same guy he looked like in New York when he was seeing ghosts, and the same guy he looked like in Carolina. And at some times so far this season, like back when they played the Rams the first time Seattle did, and even for a period of time on Thursday, he's looked like that guy, a guy that is not the resurrected Sam Darnold that's been one of the better quarterbacks in the league over the last 2 seasons. So they certainly cannot let him sit back there in the pocket and pick them apart in this game on Sunday. So those are some of the matchups we're looking at on Sunday afternoon between the Panthers and the Seahawks. But the keys to victory, what does Carolina have to do? What does Seattle have to do to get the win on Sunday? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on this Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Seahawks. Back here for one final segment on this Locked On crossover Thursday of Locked On Panthers, Locked On Seahawks, again presented by our friends over on Prize Picks. Looking at the keys to victory, Corbin, what does Seattle have to do in order to win this game on Sunday and stay atop of the NFC West and atop of the NFC?
I think it starts and it finishes with their ability to make Carolina one-dimensional. Take away their ability to run the football and make it that Bryce Young has to beat them with the offense being on his shoulders, because Seattle they may have a few guys out in their secondary, but they're going to be close to full strength in this football game. They're going to be looking to get after the quarterback. This has been a run defense that now has had 24 consecutive games without giving up a 100-yard rusher. They're going to be looking to get to 25 in this contest. The Panthers have a couple of really solid running backs that complement each other. The Seahawks are going to be looking to bottle up Chuba Hubbard and company. They're going to be trying to get back to Bryce Young and make life difficult on him. And you look at where Carolina has struggled when they have had to really put everything on his plate, on Bryce Young's plate, and the offensive line has been tested with all the different combinations they've had. Seattle's defensive front, even with Derek Hall being suspended for this game, they've still got DeMarcus Lawrence. They've got Uchenna Nwosu. They've got Boye Mafe, all the interior defensive talent that they've got on that defensive line. If they can find a way, to me, the key is getting at least 2 sacks and 6 quarterback hits. And I think if they're able to check those boxes off, then they can get a few turnovers. You're going to have make some of those big plays on the road, especially for a team that, even if they can't clinch this week, and there's still a way that Carolina can, this game still has significance for them no matter what. But if you can find a way to get that pressure, consistent pressure on Bryce Young, not let him extend plays when you're able to collapse the pocket and extend him and allow his receivers more time to throw the football, those are going to be the keys. Getting pressure and being able to finish, being able to get after him. And I think that's how you get the turnovers. You get some quick, sudden changes, get the ball back to Sam Darnold and let him go to work, and let Seattle's run game go to work. I think that is the recipe for the Seahawks to get off to a quicker start and find a way to win a game that I think is going to be a challenging one on the road, especially with the target they've got on their backs and what the Panthers have at stake in the NFC South.
Yeah, definitely got to get home on Bryce. And that's been, again, the issue that some of these teams recently have had. They've not been able to get him on the ground, and they have not been able to get the ball out. And you look at Carolina over the last couple of games, if you take out the whole pitchy woo-woo they did at the game against New Orleans where they weren't going to win anyways, like 2 seconds left, having to go like 80 yards, they haven't turned the ball over in 4 of their last 5 games. The last time they really had turnovers was against San Francisco on the road on Monday night, where Bryce did not play well. But other than that, he's taking care of the football. And early on in the season, that was a common thread to why they started off 0-2 and were behind Miami by 17 points before they came back. He did not take care of the ball, and Carolina did not do the best job at protecting him. So that will be obviously a key as well for them. But I'm looking at it as far as, like, you got to get after Sam Darnold. We can talk about all the narratives, Sam in a big game and whether he can live up to the spotlight. He showed you that last Thursday. The guy has been, for the most part, nails the last 2 seasons. And I know it didn't end well last year. We'll see how it ends for them up there in Seattle this year. But when he's kept clean, he's got a 91 PFF grade. When he's under pressure, it's in the 50s. So he goes from being an elite quarterback to being kind of the same old Sam Darnold. They've got to find a way to get pressure on him. The Panthers have been one of the worst pressure teams in the NFL. They have been last in PFF pressure percentage all season long, and they have found a way recently to get quarterbacks on the ground, but they still have not gotten consistent pressure, and that will be an issue for them if they cannot find a way to manufacture that on Sunday. Turnovers are obviously a huge key in this game, as you talk about as well for Carolina, and the wins that Carolina has. They're +7 in turnover margin. Seattle's only +1 in their wins. And overall, the Panthers have a better turnover margin this season than the Seahawks. If they can find a way to force pressure on Sam Darnold, that pressure leads to turnovers and mistakes. That can help them win. And they got to be aggressive. The Seahawks are a better team than them. And we have seen this season when they played against the Rams, they played against the Packers, Dave Canales has been willing to go for 4th downs. He's been willing to be far more aggressive than you may see him against teams that may be considered on the same level as Carolina or below them this season. So you need to be aggressive again in this game if you're going to find a way to get out on top. And then potentially, depending on the result down there in Miami Gardens, Florida, you could be, again, division champs for the first time in a decade. So that's what I'm looking at for Carolina on Sunday. Any other closing thoughts? Potentially, do you have a pick for this game, Corbin, on Sunday?
Yeah, and I will give my prediction, my score prediction I always do on the Friday show. But this one is going to be one of those contests that I think is, just because of how inconsistent Carolina's been, if you're going by trends, then this game should be Seattle's. But I don't think you can live and die off of trend, especially this time of year when you have teams that are battling for playoff spots. They're battling to make it into the dance as Carolina is. And playing on the road, Seattle's been as good as anybody. I think Carolina is going to be game for this one. It's going to keep it close, but I think the Seahawks find a way to cover in this one. And I think it's going to boil down to them just having a little bit more talent on both sides of the ball. And they've still got so much to play for. This isn't going to be a trap game for the Seattle Seahawks. I know there's some people like, oh, they're going to be looking to the 49ers. Like, so if they're looking at that number 1 seed, you can't be overlooking your next opponent. You've got to win. Mike McDonald's been really good about that messaging. So while I think Carolina is definitely a team that is on the upswing in this one, I find it hard to believe that this Seahawks defense in particular is going to allow this game to not go their way and position themselves where the 49ers and the Rams can take this division and they squander a great opportunity that they have put themselves in. I just can't see the Seahawks doing that in this contest. Though Carolina, maybe they have something to say about that with their season on the line here trying to win that NFC South.
Yeah, and you can make the argument, depending upon this result for Seattle, if they do lose, that could cost them a trip to the Super Bowl, because it is a lot easier when you get that bye and people have to go up to the Pacific Northwest to beat your team at home than obviously having to go on the road if that is the case. And looking over at FanDuel, our partners, Seattle is a 7.5-point road favorite against Carolina. Now, the Panthers have been big dogs like that against the Packers and the Rams. So I would say beware to all Seahawks fans out there when looking at that line, as Carolina's found plenty of ways this season to win as underdogs. Problem's been winning as favorites, which they will not be favored at any point the rest of the season, whether it be next week down in Tampa or if they do make the playoffs. Ain't nobody going to be favoring Carolina in Vegas to win any of these games, which for Panthers is probably the best case scenario for them anyways. But that's going to wrap up this edition of this Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Seahawks. Julian Council, host of Locked On Panthers. Corbin Smith, one of the hosts of Locked On Seahawks. We'll be back with y'all again on Friday. I'll talk more about keys of victory, look at the injury report. Corbin will give you his score prediction for the game on Sunday. Should be a good one between the Carolina Panthers and the Seattle Seahawks. Tune in for all that and more here on Friday on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Seahawks.